This movie is so beautifully done. I saw it yesterday, and about a third of the way in, people started sniffling, me included. And that didn't stop until the end of the film. And it's not because it's sad, but because it's so inspirational. When you first read the script, did you see the potential the movie had to be that moving?
More than the potential. You could feel the spirit on the page reading it. And the thing I remember most vividly about just reading it was how cynical it found me. I read it and was made, I realized that if the second coming knocked on my door, I would slam the door on its face, because I just wouldn't be ready to hear it. And it's so true of any great message. We think that we lose sight of it. We think that we need a messenger like Fred Rogers to come into our lives, but the truth is the message that he was talking about was universal. What made him so special was that he embodied it. He just embodied it. He was love in action, love in life. And how do you break that down? By seeing the beauty in everything and everyone, which is not an easy task. And what this film taught me is how, well, it's solidified so many things, but we can say we identify ourselves through some kind of religion, but that identification doesn't necessarily make us enact the principles of that faith. We forget that all of it takes practice and practice and practice and practice, and that's what he did. He practiced this stuff over and over and over again. Who's willing to do that? Who's willing to make? Because beauty never left us. We think, yes, there's crappy things going on. We're so quick to say, that person's to blame, or that person's to blame, and why can't we go back to a time? But the truth is that beauty has never left us, ever. And he was a man who embodied that. You know, the film says, I've met the people in his life who confirmed that the man is not a saint. And I guess by saint, we think, and even if we look back at saints throughout our time, or, you know, throughout history, we think that it was some kind of divine intervention that came in and changed your life. And it's just like, okay, this sleigh ride is happening, and I'm out of control, and the spirit of love is possessing me. But I would disagree. I think all those people that we deem as saints really had a hard time. They had to struggle. Mother Teresa in our lifetime, the saints of our lifetime, you know, Gandhi, Mother Teresa. It's work. It's a commitment to be that person. So it's easy to say, you know, this film is so relevant right now and this time. I go, come on, guys. Let's stop waiting for the messenger and realize that the message is still with us, and we're the idiots. We're the ones who don't realize that the thing that we all want the most, we have so much difficulty in asking for. We scrape our knuckles, we bung our heads, we drink too much, we work too much, we eat too much, we do all these things. How can we get good at saying, if you talk about it, it's manageable?
What was your first introduction to Mr. Rogers? Did you watch this show when you were a child?
Of course. But growing up in Toronto, in Canada, I had Mr. Dressup. I had The Friendly Giant. And even though I don't, you know, as a child, you don't remember if there was anything controversial about those guys. But Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood really was brave enough to deal with the culture of America at that time. Was really unafraid to talk about the war that was happening at the time, divorce, homosexuality. The man was talking about it. And you think, oh, how could you talk about that to kids? But kids are smarter than we are. The kids are open to it. They're not judging any of it. They just learn to accept it, because if we're talking about it, then it's okay. There's nothing scary about those things because we get to talk about it. When my character, Bill Eisler, says, Daniel is Fred and Fred is Daniel, it's just Fred talking to himself. And I had heard stories that maybe I heard it through the documentary, but sometimes when Fred would have to deal with his own kids, he'd have to, talk through his puppet. Well, yeah, that could be a little messed up for a son to see his dad talking to a puppet when you think your dad should be a certain way. But it didn't stop him. And that beautiful moment where Lloyd, and where Fred acknowledges, yes, I can see, thank you for that perspective, Lloyd, that it must have been difficult for my children. But he didn't punish himself for it. He just embraced the fact that being a parent is difficult. Being a parent is difficult. And if we just say, man, it was really hard, I'm having a hard day, it's just like, thank you, Mr. Rogers. It's such a simple philosophy, but how frightened we are of it. It's like I'm an actor. I've been trained to act. My emotions don't frighten me because I know that's what's expected of me as an actor. But when you're not surrounded by actors and you start talking about, I'm kind of afraid about that. You feel the whole room just kind of go, what? You shouldn't be afraid. Being afraid is detrimental. It makes you weak. You can feel the energy in the room just by admitting that you're afraid of something. And I was like, are you kidding me? The fear is there. I acknowledge it. I know where I want to go. Right? So the message isn't new. The messenger was at that time, and I'm glad that he's being reintroduced. Mm-hmm. So glad that this film is coming out. I mean, it would have been poignant any time, but clearly the need for it has manifested itself into the present day, and we're making that film with such an extraordinary human being as Mr. Hanks and Mr. Reese, and I feel so blessed to be just even associated with this film, watching the film and how Mari had orchestrated every scene. There were a lot of scenes that, not a lot of scenes, but there were a few scenes that she'd cut out that I was in, and I go, but no, it's perfectly orchestrated how she incorporates my voice just sporadically, just as a reminder that someone is there to take care of Fred.
Did you meet Bill Eisler before?
I did. Oh, we became very good friends. We're still good friends. He's wonderful. He and his wife Marty took care of Rosanna and I, my wife, the whole time we were in Pittsburgh. They treated us like we were visitors, and they brought us places. They showed us where Fred bought his shoes and where he had dinner, and told us stories, and brought us to Joanne's house, and we met Joanne in their apartment, their home in Pittsburgh. We saw the pianos, and there couldn't have been a better preparation for me as an actor, just to absorb him and the osmosis that happened by just, the first time I heard his voice on the phone, I go, I know this guy. He talks like me, he sounds like me, and sure enough, I think people in Pittsburgh grow up differently because they stay in Pittsburgh. The people who grew up in Pittsburgh are still there. Bill, Fred, they grew up in Pittsburgh. There's such an awareness of neighborhood. Yeah, he grew up in that neighborhood, and that neighborhood. And that neighborhood was over on the other side of the river. Oh yeah, we never went into that neighborhood, or we love that neighborhood. I'm my best friend. I dated a girl from that neighborhood. You think about it, you go, of course Fred Rogers was so aware of neighborhoods and the spirit of neighborhood and how people treated each other, because you go to Pittsburgh, and they're still gracious and lovely, and it's a small city. It hasn't been overrun by commercialism. It hasn't been overrun by consumerism. If there's a football game, everybody is watching that football game. It's communal. So it's no accident that that a voice like Fred's came from a city like Pittsburgh. Not to me anyway. And for it to sort of culminate and manifest at this time is pretty darn special.
Do you have a favorite scene from the movie? Because for me it was the subway scene, and I heard that that actually happened in real life.
Yes, it did, apparently. Well, my favorite scene was the scene in the Chinese restaurant, where he literally took a minute of film time to allow an audience to think about the love that brought us into this life. It allowed everybody in the audience to think about that one moment, because the filmmaker allowed us to feel it. And that's what was beautiful about Mari's orchestration of that film, and how she, yeah, that was my favorite scene.
Tom Hanks really channels Fred Rogers in this film. What was his process like on set?
I couldn't tell you. It was all internal. He was always Tom to us.
Yeah.
The only time I spoke to Fred Rogers was when the cameras were rolling. The rest of the time it was Tom talking about baseball and hockey and just, hey man, what's going on? Making fun of my shiny head. He just, you know, he's just, so many people, so many actors, I don't know. I mean, he's royalty to me. He's always been royalty to me. And for him to carry himself that way is a credit to him as a human being, because he's aware of the effect he has in the world. He's aware of it, and he's willing to take the responsibility. And I think that's where the similarities with him and Fred were. Two different people, but the awareness of the responsibility. I know how you see me, and I need to be responsible with that, and I need to treat you with loving kindness. And Tom Hanks is like that. His conversations are about, hey man, what's going on? Hey, I heard about what was going on with you there. And it's just like, wow, you're from Toronto. Hey, how the Maple Leafs doing? Are they really snake bit? Like that was the first thing he said. Those Maple Leafs, are they as snake bit as one would think? I go, no man, we're coming back. We've got a core. He goes, yeah, no, I go to my, you know, Colin and I go see hockey all the time. And he's like, are you kidding me?
Wow.
That's who Tom Hanks is.
Thank you so much for talking to me today about this film.
Pleasure.
It's such an incredible film.
I can't wait for people to see it.
Yeah.
I can't wait for the dialogue to happen. I can't wait for the people, you know, who really insist that something needs to be done in the world, has to change. And I'm going, no, man, you're missing the point. This film is it's an internal film. It's, you know, Lloyd is Fred, Fred is Lloyd. Daniel is Fred, Fred is Daniel. You know, I am Fred, you are Fred, everybody.
Yeah.
Beauty is present, and I can't wait for the dialogue to happen. Hopefully that'll change the world a little bit and make us all a little more responsible.